I'm sure all of you have had the feeling where there's the knock at the door and you're not expecting anybody at home, and maybe you're well coiffed and in your bathrobe like this gentleman, or maybe you're just sitting on the couch perfectly dressed and like, who is it, right? And let's think about the days before video doorbells from that, before you could check and see. And you're maybe peering out and seeing who it is, or you just have the guts and you go to the door and open it. And what's on the other side is usually a salesperson. There's somebody who wants to have a transaction with you. So you have this unexpected knock at the door. You weren't planning to receive the door. You weren't planning to buy whatever they're selling or to sign whatever they're asking you to sign from that. But that person is prepared on the other side of the door for that knock. They know what they're going to do from you. It's not really the best relationship. In fact, it's no relationship. It's a one-sided transaction. If they're lucky, they may get you to buy something to go through, but it's not that helpful. And I look at this, and some of you who have blogging sites, and even if you don't, these are the people who knock, and they send something over, and you're like, what the heck, right? It comes in, and they've knocked on your inbox, and they share it, and you're like, this is really a bother. At best. It's just an irritation, right? Because you don't have to buy anything. You can close the door, be polite, but you can close the door and move on from that. And so there's that transactional, the one-way transactional blogger. And it's funny because even if you don't have a blog, you will still get those people. I have a couple clients who don't have any blog, and then they get the thing complimenting them on their blog and how much this person wants to write for them. You're like, okay, thanks. Not tempting to start a blog based on their feedback. But here's where most of us in the guest blogging community live from that. We are on the other side of the door. If we are the blog site, we are the blogger who shows up. There's an expectation, right? Somebody's on the other side of that door. They've ordered that coffee and donuts or whatever breakfast they're having there. And so they're happy to see this gentleman show up with their coffee because they are expecting that transaction from that. And that's what you do right now is most sites, if you accept guest bloggers or if you're a guest blogger, you're delivering something that they probably want. Now, maybe it may be made to order or it may not be exactly made to order, but it's a transactional relationship. It's two-way transactional. And that's really where most of us end it, right? This person who opens that door is never going to see this guy again. It's going to be a different delivery person. They're not interested in forming a relationship with the guy who's delivering their coffee. That's not their goal. Their goal is to get the coffee. So for other sites, the goal is to get the blog from that. And the bloggers is to submit it and get it published. And then that's it. And that's where most of us leave off. And that's fine. It's two-way transactional. It gets the job done. But you do a lot of work to get to be able to deliver the coffee, to deliver the blog. And you should be able to use it longer. And sites want you to have that. So we'll go to the third knock at the door. This is the relationship you want. So we can tell this family has shown up. There's friends or family on the other side that are expecting them from that. They're going to have a nice celebration. They're looking forward to seeing them. And they're bringing gifts. So chances are these gifts have been thought of who the guest is, who they're going to see, that they're customizing the gift from it. It may be made to order gift, or it may just be something that they think they're interested in. And that's what we're going for in a guest blogging relationship that gets invited back, that you get the invitation to knock on the door, to come and to have either to come into the organization and have a meaningful conversation and to make sure that you're delivering from that. So we don't want to be the person who just knocks on the door and says, hey, here, I'm selling this. Do you want to buy it? And guest blogging's free, so it's more attractive, but we really want to get to this point. So that's what we're going to go through today is how to get to this and not to start with the coffee order. We're not even going to pay attention to the guy in his robe having to answer the cold call at the door from that. So there's 5 steps we're going to go through, some a little quicker than others because you're probably more familiar with them and kind of get into some more meat at the end to come through. So you need your purpose. You need to prospect and figure out where, because anywhere is not going to work well for you. The pitch. So most blogs take pitches. For those of you who do accept guest posts, how many of you accept blog pitches? So pitching an idea from that. And how many of you require the full post? CMI requires the full post, but we're going to talk pitches because that's more common to come through. Publishing, getting the agreement to do that. And then the last one, promote and partner from that. So we will take through, and then the goal is to have questions at the end, and certainly I'm available afterwards from that. So the purpose. Why are you guest blogging? You have to think about it as part of your content marketing strategy. Guest blogging is not just a nice to have and something to do. If you think that way, you're not going to reap the effects and the benefits of it from that if you're just looking to get published to come through. So these are just some of the high kind of common ones. Reaching a new audience. So somebody has an audience that you want to reach. It needs to be relevant, though, to what you do and to what they do. So think of the Venn diagram, crossover. So you're reaching a new audience. And I will say the slides will be available later. I'm one of those people who turned it in late, so they will be uploaded later to go through. Growing in your credibility. So if you want to, perhaps there's somebody in your company that you want to position as a subject matter expert. Perhaps it's the company you want to make sure that we're out there, higher profile of talking about this subject. There's thought leadership, all that kind of thing to get into. You might want to connect your name to a reputable site or brand from that. So if you're in the tech industry and you want to get published on the IBM blog, I know they have several from that, and to do that, connecting your name to then say you have a link from IBM, that's a credible connection from that IBM valued your content enough to come through. And also just to be seen as a helpful resource. So it's not just that you're expecting everybody to come to your site or the site to do that. You're interested in reaching out and building a community from that to come through. Backlinks are often thought of as the top reason for guest blogging, and that's fine if that's your reason. You just have to think about it. So including, and when we talk about backlinks, it's writing content and including a link in there, and we're going to talk more about that, but it's to helpful content. It's not promotional links to your site, your product page, and that kind of thing. We're talking about valuable content and relatable links, because those links will then drive traffic to your site. It helps from an SEO perspective, and especially if the site is a high domain authority. Some of this, if you're not as familiar, there's some resources at the end I share, but the domain authority is a Moz calculation on how, again, it's more of a credibility. How reliable are you delivering content that people want is the quick version of the Moz score for the domain authority. You may want to expand your social media presence. So they may be sharing their content in their blogs posts, and so you're going to help get connected to them. You're going to get tagged in it from that. And the last one is increase your own audience. And as Joe Polizzi was talking about yesterday, and this is his mantra for a long time from that you want to own your audience. If that's your goal with guest blogging, you need to think a little differently. It's not just about getting published. It's about how can I drive the traffic. If I'm driving traffic to my site, if there's an external link in there and I'm driving traffic to our site, what does our site look like? Are we asking for subscribers on that page? You still want to provide the relevant and helpful content, but how are you pushing that? If in some places you can't say in the middle of the post, subscribe to our newsletter, that's a little promotional, and usually it does not fit into the narrative of it. But maybe in the bio, you can put from that, like subscribe, we have a weekly newsletter or something like that. You could just add it into the bio. So that's kind of that narrow focus, and it requires you to think differently about how you're going to do it. So that's where kind of understanding your purpose, your why, and how it fits into your overall strategy then allows you to find sites and ways to communicate through guest blogging to come through. So prospecting, and where do I find these sites to guest blog from that? First of all, there's two things that has to happen. You need to pick a site that has, and multiple sites, we're not going to limit it to one, that has an audience you want to reach, that you want access to, and a site that covers topics relevant to your brand and what you want to talk about. So for example, if I was trying to reach dads 30 to 45 from that to come through, there might be a fashion site that reaches men 30 to 45, and that's their target, but they're not focused on the dad part of it. So my content on dads at 30 to 45 that need to be written to try to attract that audience wouldn't necessarily work on that fashion site. So even though we have similar audience overlap, we don't have similar purpose and topics from that. So as we figure out our prospecting, the first thing I'm going to tell you is create a tracker. And I have an Excel spreadsheet I can email to you, and I've got information at the end that goes through this from that, this kind of table thing. You want to keep track of it and you want to keep organized because this is going to be a lot of information coming in and you're going to forget. You also need to keep track not only of the sites that you want to publish on that have guest blogging that look like good candidates, you want to keep track of the sites that don't have guest blogging so that 6 months down the road when somebody says, why aren't we on that site? You can look back at your tracker and say, well, they don't have a blog, or they don't have guest blogging, or somebody else on your team is using it when you're using multiple people from that, so keeping track from that. Obviously, customize the columns to whatever works best for you to come through, but start the tracker from day one when you're prospecting to come through. So finding the sites, here are a few resources. I ask your fellow coworkers, how anybody in sales in here? Ask the sales team. Where do they go to find out about industry trends? Where do they go to get the information that they talk to their customers? Hopefully you're one of those resources, but they're probably using other resources. So where do we get trends from? Where do we find out what's happening? What are the pain points from that kind of thing to do? So ask employees, and then if you're talking to customers, which I strongly recommend when you're doing content marketing on all sorts of things, add the question about where they get their information. You can use, excuse me, you can use the free almighty Google, put in your topics, see what the results come in, and even go to page 2 or 3, that's okay, because you're looking for sites that are publishing and talking about your topic. You're not looking for what they're saying at the moment on it, but that's a helpful resource to do and an easy one to do. Sometimes parts of this can be a good intern project, and I think one of the challenges sometimes is we expect interns to be their own workers and to know what to do, but they should be able to get to this level of Google from that. Keyword tools, SEO tools will be helpful in finding sites that cover your keywords, your topics from that, and then evaluating those sites. So SEMrush, BuzzSumo, SEMrush, I just did a clip of their domain overview. So you put the domain of where you want to possibly blog, and they're going to give you all sorts of information about that domain. So you can decide, does this have the audience we need? Is this getting the traffic? All those kind of things to do it. BuzzSumo, down here, it's way too small to read, but they talk about social interactions. So Facebook engagements, Twitter shares of articles. I searched it, a search for content marketing from that. So you can get some social Reddit engagements. They do a monitoring of it. And so it helps you pick your topics, but it also helps you pick your sites and kind of narrow your focus to do. And the last one is look at the page, again, the website of where you want to go, whether it's their blog or other content, and look at their tags, look at their categories, and see what that tells you what's important to them. So they may cover a lot of topics, but look at the categories they're covering. So for example, in Content Marketing Institute, it's down here, we publish it right after the byline, and there's a primary and secondary category that we pick. So in this one, it's content creation, and then the other categories are blogging, SEO, conversion optimization, and productivity. We like a lot of them because it falls in, this one fell into a lot of categories. But that gives you an idea, for example, of what's important at the Content Marketing Institute from that. So you can look at the tags that are published on the site. And that's the great thing about all of this is there's so much information already there. It's just doing a little bit of digging and you can find information. And this will set you apart. It will definitely. We're going to get into some of the don'ts later, but it will set you apart so that when you're pitching or writing, you're going to be far more on target than the average submission that comes in to do. Back to our tracker. So in our tracker, we want to make sure that they have a blog, first of all, and that is guest blogging permitted. The great sites have guest blogging guidelines, and that's helpful. Include the link. So again, if somebody else is doing this, make sure that the link is there to the guest blogging guidelines, and you can move on from that. But again, hitting the social handles, the topics, the audience. And this is one of the tips when I reached out, and I think it's a great advice. the time to start building the relationship is actually before you knock on that door. It's following them on social, interacting, commenting on their blogs that they have from that, and already making an introduction of yourself from a digital perspective to come through. It's not bugging them with the phone call. The old days, if you wanted to get a guest column in a print, you might have to bug them with a phone call, and you feel more like you're pestering. This is pretty easy, that you could just start following them on social and kind of interacting with them in that way. So then your name may be familiar. Now the blog person may be somebody different, but at least your name is familiar, and you're also learning at the same time of what kind of content gets a response. What kind of content are they doing from that? So looking at their social channels, and then if you can find a name, that's great. Names are sometimes hard to come by for various reasons, but think about it. So now that you've picked your site, you're not expected to read this, so don't worry. Now that you've picked your sites, you have a list of sites to go through. You've verified that they have a blog at least. You maybe make an inquiry if they accept guest blog posts, if they don't have guest blogging guidelines, say that 3 times, to come through from it. And then you're going to look at the blogging guidelines. Now, I recommend do not do the whole list, right? Now you've got your tracker list and you've got all these sites and you spent a lot of time and energy. Pick 3. Pick 3 to focus on, because if you try to do 50, you're going to get lost. You're also going to start pitching pretty much the same thing to multiple sites, and then you're going to get in that you have 2 dates at once problem. They both show up at your door and knock at your door and wonder why there are 2 of them there. So you make sure to just pick a manageable number. So I recommend 3. It could be 5, but pretty much don't go beyond 5 unless even if you're a large team, there's a lot of communication that has to happen to go through. So this is Fundera's guest post from that. And they are thorough, very thorough. And Leah's company also has a very thorough site. Content Marketing Institute has a very detailed site. First, it's a test to see if you can read. And that sounds like it's easy. It's not. We've learned. I think Fundera's is just a ton. Is anybody connected with the company here? It's a great example, but it's a ton of information to digest. And we've actually, at the Content Marketing Institute, we shortened it, believe it or not, when you look at it, because people weren't reading all that. We knew people weren't reading all of that. So if you have, though, and you do accept guest blog submissions and you're getting less helpful stuff, think about doing that. They detail their audience. They explain who they are. They're the largest online publisher focused solely on financial advice for starting, growing, and managing small businesses. I'm not reading all of this. Don't panic. They talk about the diverse range of topics that they cover, but they're saying, here's what's more likely to get published. Over there, you get to links and titles. You can look at some titles that they do. They describe their readership. They even have a link to show you what the perfect blog looks like from their eyes to come through. And they put a word count. This is really extensive. Their word count is like 1,500 to 2,500, and then they said the longer the better. I'm not sure I want to read 3,000 words on the small business, but they give you everything. So they've opened the store for you. They've opened their door. Take advantage of that when you're looking at it from that, whether it's as detailed as this or it's very simple on the process that you need to take to come through. Pay attention to that and you will get noticed.